Hello and welcome to this latest edition of Pompey Talk. My name is Mark McMahon, and joining me today to discuss all the developments at Pompey is the News' Jordan Cross. Jordy, it's been a week since I've been on duty. I've had a wee bit of a break. A lot has changed in those 7 or 8 days. Victories against Borough, victory against Ipswich. Completely different picture from when I was back on duty.
Yeah, we were peddling the doom and gloom, weren't we? Before you went away, that was it. We were reveling in the misery. Well, we weren't
reveling.
We weren't reveling in the misery at all. But there was that air around Fratton Park, a lot of gloom, a lot of questions being asked, with total justification around the club, the ownership, the direction headed. But as we always say, Mark, and this is what has been, was mentioned when we were talking about budgets and the Eisners and the lack of investment on the pitch. We say that what happens on the pitch sets the temperature for what happens around the club. And lo and behold, two totally unexpected victories, two very different types of victories. A kind of a more backs to the wall, although we can go into the detail of Middlesbrough, and it's slightly different in terms of the halves, how it played out. I thought it was a fantastic defensive performance in the first half, and then a real rearguard action in the second with some fortune, and then that great drama. And to get a win like that against a promotion rival lifted the spirits, and we were thinking we might be going to the well a bit for Ipswich Town against the might of and the resources they have. And I was just looking at some of their players. They're bringing on the Danish lad, I think it was the Norwegian winger, who was 17.5 million, and Jack Clark's 15 million, and Philogene, Mehmeti, the Pompey tormentor, and all this. So you thought it might just be a bridge too far for Pompey on Tuesday. And what a performance! What a night under! It was everything that is. It was Pompey incarnate in terms of the whole feeling around the place, the Bear Pit under the lights, Fratton atmosphere. The intensity of the performance. I love what Andre Dezelle said when I spoke to him after. He said, "That's the Pompey I know." And he was talking about the energy of the performance, the energy of the press, the atmosphere, how the supporters set the tone, and then Pompey fed off the performance, and then likewise the supporters fed back off the performance to create the atmosphere that is a special one. And in the end, a fully deserved victory. Pompey rode out that first 20-25 minutes where Ipswich looked everything that you expected them to be, and then they come in and delivered that double body blow before the break. And in the second half, they saw out fantastically well. The fact that it was so little in terms of goal threat from Ipswich sort of spoke volumes about how they did that. And then that just swings the whole relegation picture, doesn't it? And now you're looking at a position where Pompey, again, we can go into the kind of whole makeup of the picture with the PNS situation with West Brom this week. But you're thinking that Pompey are a giant step closer to safety. Not there, and let's face it, it could swing the other way if it goes this wrong this weekend. And the one thing I heard more than anything after Ipswich was this would be bloody Pompey, wouldn't it? Beat two promotion rivals and then go and get tanked at home by Team One, winning 15.
Yes, let's talk about Leicester, and I'm going to talk to you about that point in particular in a second. But 6 points from those two games, it paints a different picture in terms of this game against Leicester, but it still doesn't change it. This is still a big game for Pompey. The pressure might have slightly eased, but the pressure is still on to an extent that you can get across the line on Saturday if you really wanted to.
Yeah, I think they more or less can do. A win would take them to 51 points. I just think maybe 52 would definitely get you there now. But it would, pretty much put them over the line. It's always been billed as a must-win, a relegation survival 6-pointer. Obviously, with the way that things have swung this week with those 6 unexpected points, I think Pompey now get the draw. The draw is in their favour. And this is a real interesting dynamic into how the game unfolds, because as much as Ipswich came onto Pompey and played like teams have done at Fratton Park last season when they came and had a go and Pompey exposed them, it's been very different this season, hasn't it? You've had teams sit deeper and Pompey found it hard to pick them off and break them down. So it's a real interesting dynamic into how Leicester approach the game and how Pompey then have to kind of counteract that? Do they sit deep? Do they try and come in and keep it tight and then try and grow into the game? Obviously, because ultimately it's do or die pretty much for Leicester. They need the win more than Pompey do ultimately. So how that factors into the tactical battle is a real fascinating sort of element to how this goes this weekend. And yeah, it's intriguing to how it goes. And it's one of the issues I picked up with John Messino, and he's kind of gone into the nuances, which you'll see in stories sort of over the next sort of 12, 24 hours at portsmouth.co.uk.
Leicester boss guy Riot did say like this is our last chance saloon really against Pompey, isn't it? They need the win. Can Pompey use that to their advantage when the game could be more open? They could play their more natural game rather than having those teams sit back and say to Pompey, come on, break us down, which has been their downfall so many times this season. Could that work to Pompey's advantage then?
If Leicester come out front-footed, yes. But do Leicester come out like that? Do they come out gung-ho? Has that been the identity of Leicester under Gary Rowett? I don't think so. He's more of a pragmatic manager, solid, organised, get the fundamentals in place rather than this kind of free-flowing gung-ho. So I don't think, although there is that kind of dynamic to it, I don't see, I may be wrong, but I don't see Leicester coming out gung-ho and going full throttle, even though they have to have the victory. Obviously, there may be a game within a game. It may be that they come in for 45, 60 minutes, try and like stay in the game and frustrate Pompey, and then when that angst goes, their game plan will be they'll be well aware of the Fratton factor. They've seen what happened on Tuesday night. They've seen the intensity and the momentum that Pompey build with the players in tandem with the supporters. So they will probably come in and try and frustrate them and see some angst grow, and then kind of try and do a sucker punch on Pompey. That would be my best guess at the moment. So yeah, that's what I mean. Does it play into Pompey's favour? I'm not necessarily sure it does. That said, when you have that irresistible air that Pompey have got about them at the moment, and you can see obviously the form. I think it's 1 win in 15 for Leicester.
Yeah.
Will that be just too much for them? I know I've been asking questions of Leicester. These players that are going to be looking at, are they going to be here next season? These players, when they do get relegated, I'm told that there's not relegation clauses where their wages go down on a lot of these deals at Leicester, which is absolutely incredible given their parlous financial state. So yeah, have they got the gut for it, the stomach? That's what a lot of people have been asking of Leicester. I think they're going to come out. They're obviously going to have to throw everything in terms of their effort into the game. It's just how does that then manifest in how the game unfolds? It's fascinating.
Yeah. You mentioned it yourself earlier. It'd be very Pompey-like to pick up those 2 wins against promotion chasers, automatic promotion chasers, and all of a sudden then get beaten or drop points against a team battling down there for survival. Where are you sitting at there? Like we had the recent events at Charlton and Millwall where Pompey picked up those great wins, and then form has dipped.
Yeah.
So you can understand people having that worry going into this game, can't you?
Yeah, because I was one of them. I even sat there in the press box on Tuesday. I couldn't even. I mean, obviously, there's the pressure of work and getting stories finished on deadline. But I changed. I turned around to a colleague from Express FM, James Wilson, who's a Pompey boy, knows his football, and he's been around Pompey for a while as a fan. And he said, and as it was obvious the win was in the bag, I said then to him, I said, what's going to happen on Saturday, and we were laughing about it. I couldn't even afford myself to kind of enjoy the moment, because immediately at that full-time whistle, I was kind of getting my work done, and I was thinking, yeah, we're going to let ourselves down against Leicester now. I said, it's great. We look great at the moment, but come Saturday tea time, if they lose this one, you're looking over your shoulder again. Because it's so tight down there at the bottom, and that you can conceivably in a position where if you say mind indications that West Brom are going to lose 6 points, so before the weekend they could be on 44, Oxford on 44. Leicester, if they were to beat Pompey, would be on 44. It would be incredibly tight still. So, that was. I think it's just deeply ingrained in Pompey supporters to feel that way, isn't it? So, probably a modicum of enjoyment for 2 seconds on the whistle, and then my brain went to default mode, which was what I've just explained.
I from John Messino's press conference there on Wednesday, you get the impression, or Tuesday, you get the impression, or no, it was Wednesday actually, yeah. I've lost track of days, Jordy. Whatever it was, his last press conference, you got the impression though that he's also conscious of Pompey's mindset changing after a couple of wins? Is that something then he's been working on in the build-up to this year to make sure that the players are still 100% on it?
I think it's something he'll address, and he suggested that, and we talked about kind of the successes of last season and then the disappointment of the Plymouth game. It's certainly something, I think, in terms of the psychology around the game, I think he's looked at and he'll touch on. Really interesting, like one of our stories today, my concern, which I felt reassured about after I spoke to John, was the fatigue of making the longest trip of the season to Middlesbrough, the really going to the well for that one, and then the way they played with the intensity of the Ipswich game and what they had to play with, the high energy output from the players, the distances covered. I mean, you look at the likes of Andre Giselle, every gap was shut off by him in an excellent performance. The wingers, they really put their hard yards in and out of possession. I just wonder whether a third game, it might be a step too far for Pompey at the moment with the relative lack of depth that they have compared to their rivals. But John made a really good point. He said they made 4 changes on Tuesday. You've got Connor Chaplin coming back into the fold. I think probably Connor Messi goes again. Yes, there are changes there, even we've got Gus Caballero out injured. But the point that really infused me somewhat was the fact that he referenced how, if you look at this season, when Pompey have played 3 games in a week, the third game, they've actually performed in terms, he said it's not been the output, or there's not been that jaded look about the team compared to last season, where he certainly felt that was the case. He hasn't seen that. He referenced the second half in the Wrexham defeat, where Pompey were probably pretty dominant after a crap first half, if I'm honest. That was coming off the back of the Charlton and Millwall games, which were, sort of, they put the distances in then, and then came back to the whole game at Fratton, where they were totally dominant, although the result was what it was. Yeah. So that, when you look at it, when you break it down, you can't see a pattern of Pompey finishing those 3 game weeks with tiredness. So there's that, and there's the psychology where if you just don't entertain it, which seems to be another facet of the argument for John Messino, that you can almost kind of, it's a mindset tiredness. And I love what Andre Giselle said when he succinctly summed it up. He said, you don't feel all the running's worthwhile when you get the win, and like that kind of summed it up to me.
Yeah.
When you've got that kind of euphoria of the result against Ipswich and the buoyancy around the place, you don't feel so shattered as when you put those miles in and then not got the result. So psychology, a big part of it.
Yeah. Obviously Pompey are in a position too where they actually do have a couple of players who could come in to freshen that team up if Messina wants to do so. You got Keshi Anderson could come back in, Chaplin, as you mentioned, as well.
Ibu Adams, another one, isn't it?
Yeah, Ibu Adams. It was going to, exactly. Like, so there is depth there to an extent where he can maybe even boost the side a wee bit. Not have a fall off.
I mean, it's relative to the even Leicester, the resources they've got compared to Pompey.
Yeah.
They are getting some players back. We aren't in the rounds of 14 players injured anymore that we were at the turn of the year. I think we're down to kind of sort of 6 or 7 at the minute. So yeah, I mean, the obvious one for me would be Chaplin, who was ineligible on Tuesday. Swift, I thought, grew into the game. I thought he was quiet at the start, grew into it. But I don't think he probably did enough to retain his place off the back of that performance in Chaplin at Middlesbrough. So I think Chaplin probably warrants a return to the side there. Millie Ali, obviously, with so much has been made of his start and then his tailing off of form, but he was outstanding on Tuesday. I don't think you can take him out after that one. Yeah. So I think he starts. So that takes it over to Segicic, who I thought he looked like he was really he was like the duck kind of paddling furiously underwater and then just about to stay afloat on top of it against the power that Ipswich had. But he stayed in it. And what was worrying me early on was how, and for a couple of games now, is out of possession. He's not quite bright enough, Segicic, at the moment. He doesn't see the threat sometimes. But he worked really hard on that front on Tuesday, I thought. There was one moment where Clark ran behind him and offered some threat, and apart from that, he came back into it well. So that's an interesting one on the right. Does he go with Jacob? I think you start with Segicic. I don't think you put Anderson over that side. I don't think you start Blair with Caballero out. And Jacob is another one that comes in and pecks things up. So there's that. And then obviously the Ebu Adams factor, as I say, but then you've got Marlon, who started 12 games on the spin before this weekend, been outstanding. But bless Marlon as he turns 35. He's been outstanding, by the way, in that time. But at times in the last couple of games, it looked like he's like shuffling along by the last 10 minutes because he's put. it's a kind of a shuffle, like the demands of that role. And Dazelle has been probably for me the fundamental factor in the upturn in fortune since he came on at Norwich. I think he was the turning point in that game and the game since. So. That's really interesting about what you do with Ebu there coming in. So my bet would be, or I anticipate Ebu being on the bench and maybe pepping things up to some degree when it will be required.
Here's one for you, Jordy. How about putting the Adams number 10, Chaplin out on the right, and sort of no, scrap that idea. We all know what happened.
Are you trying to be smart there, Mark? You give me cold. I've got a cold shiver there. Cold sweat breaking out in a cold QPR sweat just thinking about that.
Yes, no, let's
not do that. John's not got many wrong in his time, but I think let's just leave that there. Let's leave that, please. We're talking.
We'll leave it there. We'll park that one.
Positive, Mark. Come on.
All right, then. What about the atmosphere against Ipswich on Tuesday night? That was massive. Played a massive role in the performance of Pompey. Massino has said it's probably the best he's experienced in football, which is a huge compliment to the Fratton faithful, obviously. So again, I have to detest this type of question, but how important will the fans be on Saturday?
Well, you detest it because you almost feel like it's a cliche.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'll get it, but it's a factor, isn't it? It's a genuine. If you're looking at the factors in that result on Tuesday, it was one of the big factors, the atmosphere, and it will be again this season. And I'm sure it's lovely for Pompey fans. We all like a pat on the back of it. You've seen the plaudits around the game. You just have to open your Twitter app after Tuesday night, and everyone was lauding the atmosphere. It had kind of the profile, the Sky coverage, and the pundits talking about it. And to be fair to Ipswich fans, they've been a bit of to and fro with Pompey about the postponements, but they were really. They were really sort of full of praise for Pompey and how the kind of noise was coming from all three sides and even that section in the Milton end. Yes, it is a factor. And it's interesting. I didn't know that. Did he say it was actually the best he's known in football? Did he, Moose?
It's the best he's experienced. Yeah, that may be paraphrasing it slightly, but definitely that's what the implication was. Yeah,
undoubtedly the best of the season for my money. It was. It's just something about Fratton under the lights, isn't it? That it was the best of the season, and certainly up there in recent seasons. You think back to the kind of Oxford games and the promotions and Leeds United. I think it stands alongside those. And having a chat with Conor Shocknessie afterwards, he certainly kind of ranked it with those moments. But it's needed again now, isn't it? That's what's needed. I mean, that's the bar for the support, and I think they need it's always the argument of who gets the other up for it, and there's always the players that have to set the supporters. But I think everyone understands what's required in the dressing room, in the stands, everyone around Pompey. So, ultimately, it's the players who have the greatest control of things, but it needs to be that special occasion again to get Pompey almost over the line.
Yeah. Two more questions. Second from last then. You mentioned the West Brom situation. I think he said 6 points initially, but I think you meant to say 2.
I say 2. No, it's 2 points.
Yeah. I think he said 6, but anyway, it's 2. From your understanding, and I know you've been doing a wee bit of investigative work on this here, that there could be the likely punishment for them.
Yeah. So the spread of which it's a P&S breach for West Brom. As widely reported, so for the accounts filed in December for last year, so they have to have by dint of the rules the points deduction applied to this season. The kind of spread has been something from 2 to 6 points. So my understanding is it would be 2 points, and that's the noise that I'm hearing. So it's basically in relation to interest on loans. and the argument they're saying that should that count towards the total losses, and so that's where the factor is. It's not seen as a flagrant breach of the rules. I think it's a breach of the rules, but not a flagrant breach in what we've seen in some other cases. So yeah, 2 points is the indication. John Messina quite rightly saying that they can't work on that basis, but it's a sporting issue. Pompey, quite simply, Pompey have to take themselves out of the equation, so they don't need to worry about it. That's the simplest answer. But there's a whole sporting element. If you go to the final day and those points weren't taken off, say you're Leicester or Oxford, and you're in a position where that might go from needing a point to needing a win. So tactically, it's a huge thing. There is a lot of noise I've picked up that it's a kind of fait accompli, that the hearing's sort of done and dusted, and it's all kind of agreed that it would be 2 points. Just a bit of a kind of unusual factor in this. And it's only a report. It's not anything I've garnered myself. There was a report that West Brom would not have a right to appeal, which legally I think kind of sounds a little bit dicey to me. So that just, if they didn't have a right to appeal, if they would have been the 2 points that sent down West Brom, I'm sure there would be a kind of legal sort of wrangling going on beyond the season. But yeah, that is a factor. But just kind of broadening that to the relegation picture, I just think that it's fascinating how it's unfolding. I think Charlton come back into it now. I know that I think they've got to get one more win. I know they've got Sheffield Wednesday this weekend. They go to Sheffield Wednesday. If they don't do that, then they've got Ipswich and Hull, which then goes up for a final day. That will be like kind of squeaky bum time for Charlton. So again, Blackburn, Coventry tonight.
Tonight, yeah.
Then they've only got 2 games left after that. Sheffield United and then Leicester on the final day. What a potential ding dong that is! So they probably need. So these are teams. They probably, a bit like Pompey, need another win and a draw. Maybe I think you could say, to be certain. And then Oxford. So Oxford go to Derby, Wrexham at home, and they've got Sheffield Wednesday. So yeah, we're doing the kind of, as much as like Pompey will be saying, no, we're not doing this stuff, and we're not. Of course they are. They're looking at the permutations, looking at the results. But I think you just have to kind of segregate that into, going out and just delivering, which I'm sure Pompey will. Yeah. But yeah, I think 50, 52 a win and a draw. So hopefully Pompey can get that done, particularly with hopefully a couple of teams on the beach in the final 2 games of the season.
Yeah, maybe even Coventry. I think they just need a point tonight against Blackburn, and that's them promoted. Obviously, they'll want to go up as champions, but at least
you want them done and done. You want, basically, you wanted them to kind of get up, win the title, and then go out on the piss. Basically, that's what we were hoping for. We were hoping for that situation. So it was, you don't want them kind of doing it. So hopefully, if they can get up and then they can enjoy themselves. But we just didn't want them to kind of go into the Pompey game needing anything. We wanted their fate sorted. Yeah. But if I was going to take anything, I'd take him up tonight on the lash for the next few days, and looking a bit pasty on Tuesday night.
Speaking of going on the lash, this leads into the final question. I take it no Pompey players were on the lash at the gala dinner on Tuesday night or Wednesday night. Sorry,
no, there wasn't. They genuinely were very professional. I've been at some of those. I mean, I'm not betraying confidences, but I've been at some of those events over the years gone by. Obviously, off the back of the 2 years ago, where there was where the famous kind of some of the famous Paddy Lane interviews took place ahead of that evening, where they've just been on it for 24 hours. So the end of season 2. So it happened after the promotion 2 years ago. Then the day after that, so there was some like Paddy Lane speaking in code. What those children's cartoon characters go boo 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 boo. It sounded like when he was doing an interview. Couldn't understand the word he was talking about.
I'm going to pop that moment for O'Reilly for our Facebook page, by the way. So,
Jordan Cross's analysis, in-depth analysis.
Yeah, exactly. Some people might think that's the most sensitive spoken all year. But before I do that, sorry. The reason why I brought up the gala night was obviously Terry Devlin picked up 3 awards. No surprise there, really, was there?
Oh, I mean, phenomenal. The identikit Pompey player, fully warranted. That said, I know all the praise, and we probably won't have him. We'll enjoy him for the last 4 games. I'm not sure we're going to have him for too much longer. Given that,
you wanted to be positive here.
There's positivity and optimism, and then there's got to be realism as well. Yeah. There's optimism, then there's blind optimism. So I just think that Terry ultimately maybe I think most Pompey fans realise he might be on the way come this summer. So fully warranted. But what I would say is he wouldn't get my vote. He would not get my player of the season vote. Terry Devlin has been outstanding, but he didn't start in the league for the first 13 games. Okay, and then he's been an ever-present since, save for the ban after the Sheffield United card. He's been outstanding. He's, for me, on Tuesday, there was a moment where he turned the game for Pompey when he was second favourite to win a ball off Jacob Greaves on the touchline. Greaves is obviously a big lump, and he must be used to just dismissing people, and he kind of tried to do it to Devlin, and Devlin just wasn't having any of it and just smashed him out the way. And you can see it, and then won the throw. It just kind of basically, it was like some sort of Gaelic football manoeuvre or something. It just smashed him out. And you can see, he was like, "What's going on here?" And it just got everyone up for it. And that was a turning point in the game. So love what he's done. But I would go for Regan Paul. I just think Regan Paul he was a 9.5 out of 10 on Tuesday, by the way. Just kind of the full length blocks, body on the line, the kind of copyright move that he has when he just plunges in full length to win a last ditch tackle. But I just think Regan has been more consistent over a longer period. He's been outstanding. Body, as I say, just like epitomises sort of Pompey, a bit like Terry. But whereas Terry's probably had his moments where he's learning that right back role still, and he's had some tough nights. I think about Swansea. I think about the first half in particular at Wrexham, where he had, he got a bit of a run around at times. So he's adapting to that role. He's been great though, and I can see why. Fair play to him getting it. But I would just lean towards for consistency over a longer period. I would go for Regan Paul.
Yeah, I suppose the only thing said about Terry's is that he's definitely the story of the season. If there's an element of doubt whether he's the player, he's definitely the story of the season, though, isn't he?
Yeah, it is. It's a romantic growth, isn't it? From Dungannon Swifts and all the way through and coming over here for £70,000. And I spoke to Terry after the Charlton game, and we talked about his kind of emergence. And I spoke to him in his first season in Spain, and he was kind of like a shy, kind of timid lad. Very polite, softly spoken, and the sort of growth of him as a competitor in that time. And I talked about him in that time and the hard moments he's had and the family around him. And he was like emotional about it. You could see there was tears in his eyes, and a bit like Connor Chaplin was actually last week. He was very emotional as well. But yeah, it's that's that kind of fairy tale journey, isn't it? And just chiming with Pompey fans, if you pardon the pun, in terms of what they regard as the kind of non-negotiables to be a Portsmouth player. He epitomises that, and yeah, wonderful story, wonderful lad, and he'd probably still be driving around in a Volkswagen Golf in 5-10 years if he's playing in the Premier League. That's the kind of person he is, and that's why Pompey fans love him.
Yeah, I know. You always get emotional when you talk about the hard streets of Pembroke, so I know you identify with Parry there.
That's it. The mean streets of Pembroke, and you don't want to go down Pembroke Heath. It's a while. Bandit country down the heath.
Right, we'll wrap it up at that point then. Jory, thanks for all your help again. Thanks for your insight, and hopefully you'll see us all soon with hopefully a Pompey victory against Leicester to celebrate. Until then, goodbye.